All right, now let's get into the AAA protocols or the AAA protocols. Now, AAA protocols talks about authentication, authorization, and accountability. I have added assurance to it over here. Assurance literally means that the confidence that you have in your security features, practices, and procedures. Because if you have set features or you have practices or procedures or processes, if you have confidence in that, and that is what we call assurance. So in certain organizations, you hear them saying information assurance, or you see that this is an information assurance analyst, or what the person is doing, that the person is cross-checking and making sure that the features that we have, our practices, our policies are being enforced well and are working well. Now let's get into accountability. Now, what is accountability? Accountability means the traceability of actions that are being performed on a system to a specific system user or a specific system entity. That is accountability. It means that we are tracing every action of a user. For example, the use of a unique user identification or authentication supports accountability. The use of shared user ID and password destroys accountability. Why? Because if I have my username and password, it is assigned to me. If someone else comes and uses my username and password, or if I give my username and password to someone else, what is happening is that we wouldn't know who is actually logging in. If you want me to give you a typical example, see that first, we all used to share our Netflix password with our family and friends. But Netflix realized that it's not happening anymore. So this time around, when you are logging in, Netflix want to make sure that you are who you say you are. And they want to make sure that they are able to identify every specific person. When I leave my house, I need to let Netflix know that if I'm logging in a hotel, when I go on vacation with my fiance and I'm logging into my account, what I realize is that I have to go in and log in and let Netflix know that I'm no more home. Meaning that it now puts a hold on all the information or all the accounts that I have in my house. Or Netflix just gets to know that I'm not home. So I'm outside. So it will verify me through the email or through a passcode or any kind of thing. But what we are trying to do here is that we are trying to make sure that our information or any user that logs in, we are able to trace to know every action that is being performed on the system. Authorization and authentication, they are best friends. That's why I took those two later on. The granting or denying of access rights to a user, a program, or a process. So authorization is a granting or denying of access of a user. What about authentication? Authentication is the verification of the identity of the user. How do we do that? Now, whenever you go into a website and you log in, you need to type in something before it allows you to log in. It's either your username or password, or you're going to type in your email address and password before it grants you access. Now, the process that you go through to type in your username and password, when you both type your username and password, what the system is saying is that they want to make sure that you are who you say you are. And it is you who is accessing the website. That is why it's asking you of your username and password. Now, when you realize that when you get it wrong, it just comes back and tells you that your username or password is wrong. It doesn't tell you whether your username is wrong or whether your password is wrong. It's going to say that either your username or password. It's a control. I'm going to teach you about that later on. But for now, I want you to know and understand what authentication is and what authorization is. Authorization is a granting or denying of access to a user. Authentication is the verification of the identity of the user. So when you go somewhere or you pick your phone, your facial ID is verifying that you are who you say you are. Now, the process of verifying that request or granting or denying that access is what we call authorization. I hope that is clear. Now, let's move into the factors of authentication and the methods of authentication. Now, when we say factors of authentication, we want to talk about something that you know, something you have, something you are, and where you are. When we talk about methods of authentication, we are talking about your single-factor authentication, two-factor, and multi-factor. Now, let's talk about the factors of authentication. Something that you know. What do you know? You know your username. You know your password. You know your PIN code. You realize that when you're registering a website, they also keep asking you questions that can you answer security questions. You know those passwords. All those things are something that you know. Something that you have. When you go to your workplace, see that they make you swipe your badge. Those badges, your debit card, your smart cards, your PIV cards, all those things are something that you have. Whereas something that you are, it's your biometric, your facial ID, and the last one is always your location where you are. Now, let me give you a little exercise for you to think about. When you pick up your iPhone and you are doing facial ID, think about it. Now, what kind of verification or what kind of authentication are you doing? Is it something that you know, something you have, something that you are, or where you are? Now, if you use something that you know, is what we call single-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication is something that you know and something that you have. Any of the two. And the multi-factor authentication is where all the factors of authentication are being used. I hope this authentication makes sense. So always know the difference between authorizing and authenticating. Authenticating is verifying that this person is who they say they are. Authorizing is the granting or denying of access. Know your factors of authentication, something that you know, something that you have, something that you are and where you are, and know your methods of authentication, single factor, two factor, and multi-factor. All right, I'll see you in the next class.